Thank you for having me. That is quite, I didn't expect you would read all that. So hi everyone. I highly appreciate that you're here after a very nice gala dinner. It's always very difficult to do this, so I highly appreciate it. I'll try to not wander around too much and keep to the point of what I want to present today. Just as George was saying, I am part of the OSGeo community for some time now, since 2013. I've been part of the Romanian geospatial community since 2009. I have a t-shirt, but I'm quite cold now, so I'm covering up. So today I'm going to speak not about what I do necessarily in my current job, where I work with Earth observation data to support insurance and reinsurance sector, with highlight on the damages caused by natural catastrophes in Romania. Today I'm going to speak about a project that started a long time ago in 2016 that is closer to our heart, let's say, and also to the community, to the open source community. But we also like to think that it is quite useful for the entire geospatial community, not necessarily only the open source one focused. So it is this FOSS4G Observatory. So what it is, so you can get an idea before I delve into more details. So we wanted to have a repository, of course an open source one, that could be curated and populated by the community and for the community with FOSS4G project. So open source software that is relevant for any kind of stage of geospatial processing. It's storing, is processing, is visualization, server side, it doesn't matter. It would be in this extended metadata catalog. The secret here is that what we tried to do was also to enhance a bit the documentation of these projects, in the sense that, and I'll show you in a few moments, in a sense that we also try to document elements that you cannot necessarily extract from in an automatic way from a Git repo. And I will share more there. So the FOSS4G Observatory is a new name because it's a catchier, it's easier to remember, but it's also, I think, more appropriate for what we do. The initial one was a very long one that I will not bother to read at this point, but just so you know, it is some kind of a new branding. So since 2016, I've been trying to present this project and this initiative everywhere people would receive me, because it is important for this specific initiative, just like for any other open source initiative, to gather a community around it and people knowing about it, using it, and contributed to it. So the beginning in 2016 was quite complicated in the sense that my company that I work for is part of a European Association of Remote Sensing Companies. And in that association, there was a question, what is open source? So should we even look at this? And my boss at the time said, Codrina, I know you work with open source, so maybe you're interested, maybe we could contribute to this. And I said in 2016, I was already 3 years in the OSGeo community, so me, of course, I can do this. It's so simple. I know, I go to conferences. I use the tools. The thing is that when you start to pay a little bit more attention and try to understand better a topic, the harder it gets, and you understand how little you know of it, actually. So I was in a position when I had to go and present to this board of directors in a highly proprietary environment, let's say, why is open source worthy of their attention? So the best way that at that time I thought I could do this was trying to show how big the ecosystem is, and not only how big, but how interconnected it is, how mature it is, functional, and having a high level of users and also coders. So that was my idea at the time, but how do you do it? So we started quite simply with a Google spreadsheet and trying to insert all the FOSS4G projects that we knew of at that time that would answer any kind of geospatial related step, as I was saying, storage, processing, whatever. And it was quite interesting because at the beginning we tried to document as shortly as we could. We were just two people doing this, me and Vasile at that time. So we tried to document, just to give an idea of what it was. So we decided to look at the project category, and we selected 5. It is desktop, web, mobile, server side, web tools, and the 5th is. We'll get to that. I forgot it right now, but we'll get there in a moment. So this is how it first looked like. I presented in 2016. People liked it, but really didn't fall. I didn't think that it was worthy of any kind of resources to look further into this topic. So at that point in 2016, we realized that this tool, in the end, this repository, this catalog, could quite be useful for people that had the task that I had, to present to someone outside of the community what open source is for geospatial. So we continued to do it, and we tried to get funding from other places. I continued to talk about it anytime I had the opportunity, and we also continued to add FOSS4G projects to the Google spreadsheet. And the good thing was that in 2023, ESA said, okay, this might be interesting. Let's see what you can do about it. And we had 12 months of funding to better define this metadata catalog, which we did. This is how the initial plan for the repository looked like. Oh, server side, mobile, desktop, and core libraries. So this is how it looked like. Our idea was to not only look at the very easy stuff, like what kind of project this is, what solution it is, but also look at elements that are much more, not necessarily much more, but are also relevant for a normal user. For example, the licenses. For example, the standard compliance, the geospatial standard compliance, the way that the project is run, and so on and so forth. And as I've mentioned, the idea was to create it, to put in place an infrastructure, to make it as transparent as possible, to document everything as good as possible, and then try as much as possible to convince people that are working in developing different FOSS4G projects into inserting this into the FOSS4G Observatory. It's an ongoing work. I am happy with the results. I know this is a process that takes time. We are continuing to insert projects as well. So what exactly are we documenting? As I said at the beginning, it was quite simplistic. We were looking at the main programming language, what type of project it was, what kind of solution, what kind of software. We are also looking at, we are trying to look at the dependencies, interdependencies between projects. So I know that there is the software bill of materials that is becoming quite a popular thing. Let's say has become in the last years. But what we are looking at is not necessarily all the core libraries and other projects that are related to a geospatial one, but only to the geospatial other core libraries or other projects. And I'll show you in a moment. What I want to mention is that when we decided and when we made the draft of what we want to document and how, we did this working with people from organizations that were very well aware of the open source ecosystem and understood how it functioned, how it worked. They were core developers and so on and so forth. So on the bottom of the slide you can see the institutions, people from the institutions with which we worked with defining this. We've also tried to to decide if this information that we think is relevant to know, if this can be automatically harvested from the Git repo, or if this has to be manually inserted. For example, with respect to interdependencies with other geospatial projects, although it might seem easy to harvest that from a Git repo, I can assure you it is not. Going further, how are we documenting it? Well, I kind of gave that away. We're doing it in two ways. First, it's automatic. In order to insert a project into this graph, into this database, you just need the public repo of that project. And then automatically it harvests all the information that is available there. But we also harvest manually some relevant information. From my point of view, as a person that uses a lot of open source tools, relevant is, for example, the main functionalities of that particular project. And we have defined a series of main functionalities. For example, 3D visualization, cartography and cartography, data management, and other. I think I have the category here. So data management, spatial analysis, geocoding and georeferences, we've tried to put them somehow standardized so we can then search through the entire catalog. We have here the elements that we are manually collecting. This is how the interface looks like. It's fairly easy, and we are in the next month, because ESA decided that maybe we should go further with this initiative, and I'll show you what we want to do next. We're trying to make it even more simpler for projects to be added and to this information be collected. Going further, as I've mentioned, a very important thing that sometimes for people that do not use these tools is to define correctly the interdependencies between the FOSS4G projects, which is depicted here. So it's also fairly easy to add. As mentioned, we try to spread the word as much as possible that this tool exists, so as many people know it from academia, from public institutions, companies, and so on and so forth. We are really keen, of course, in getting contributions from the community as well. An important thing here is that this mustn't be looked at as very complicated, time-consuming. To add a project, especially one that you know, would be under 1 minute, something like that. So we're trying as much as possible to keep things as fast and as simple as we can. There are different types of contributors and contributions. I will not insist here. The slides are available on pre-talks, but this is how we have imagined of building this repository curated by the community. Another thing that is very important to us is the way that this project is governed. So until 10 months from now, something like that, 10 months from now, I can calculate, but 10 months from now, this project is still implemented under a contract with ESA. As the implementing team, our goal is at some point to get the entire project under open source organization. I'm not going to name names, but I imagine you know what I'm thinking of, in order to be continuously used. So we also, this was done together with ESA and other organizations, thought about how we would define the governance of this initiative. So, of course, the foundation principles of the observatory followed the foundation principles of open source. We think about this as a tool for the users, for the developers as well, to spread out the information and knowledge about what they're doing. So we tried as much as possible to stay close to the values and the principles of open source, of the open source ecosystem. So how can you access the data? We also have an API. The data is, of course, openly licensed. If you want to, I'll show you how our graph looks. If you don't like it, please take the data, use it, do a prettier graph, do whatever you want to do with it. We have just one small wish that maybe you let us know if you've ever presented it, showed it anywhere, or I don't know, got somewhere out in the wild. It would be great. On the left side, we have the available filters, and at this point, we are looking, of course, at license, the category, the project category. I will not go through all of this because you see them, but this is how our API is at this point. So, a bit of insight into how our FOSS4G ecosystem looks like. At this point, we have documented 482 FOSS4G projects. That is huge. I don't know how you feel about it, but from my perspective, that is absolutely huge, in the sense that, I don't know, in our lifetime we work with 10, 20, 25 projects, but the ecosystem is so big. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And that makes me think that every time that I have a problem, the first thing that I do is search for someone else that had the same problem as I do, because for sure someone had it, for sure someone started some solution to solve it. So it's a growing, it's a dynamic ecosystem, and it's definitely worth being part of it, if you ask me. We have at this point 386 connected FOSS4G projects. As I mentioned, in order to see them in the graph, they have to be connected to someone that's already there. So, as I've mentioned, even though it might seem easy, understanding what other geospatial projects are used within a new developed one, it's not necessarily a simple activity, especially if you're not familiarized with the tool, never used it. Some repositories are not necessarily that neat, so it's not necessarily a trivial task. So you can see here that, oh, can you see it? Is it visible? I don't know. I see it well on my computer. So these are some very interesting visualization graphics related to what we have. We can see that in the FOSS4G ecosystem, we have quite a lot of core libraries. We have documented 195. We see that the most obvious, let's say, functionality or group of functionalities, cartography and visualization, with 141. Also, the license pie is quite diverse, and that usually can be a problem for interconnecting different solutions in your workflow. What is here? The type of a thing that I really like is related to the organization, the main organization that is supporting the project, and we can see that 194 are community projects. Also, we look at the governance model and so on. Why do we do this? So, as I've mentioned, for us it started as a way to explain to people outside of the open source what open source is, and trying to show how mature, how usable it is, and how worthy of attention it is. So this is how we started at that time. Going further in time and analyzing, looking at it, we would really like to get this extended metadata catalog, the possibility to answer like simple questions, simple in quotes. If you are looking for, I don't know, an open source solution that is compatible with a specific license that your product uses, or your other software that you uses, it's not governed by a benevolent dictatorship, uses Discord as a communication channel, and looking at all this information in a super fast way. Another thing why we think that this observatory is useful is that for someone that is not really familiar, or is not let's think about someone who loves to code but doesn't necessarily love to look at licenses and reading licenses and choosing one for his project. So this kind of tool, if you're thinking that you're a PhD student developing something, you want your result to go out there and be as popular as possible and be used and so on and so forth, you can add your project to this repository, and then in the project you say, oh my God, I have to choose a license. Oh my God, I have to choose how are the decisions within this project taken. So do I take them at night thinking, what else do I want to add, or am I speaking with some kind of project steering committee? So we also think this as a tool to support the community in better understanding or better putting their product or their software, however you want to call it, out there in the wild. So where are we going? Because we have some resources, and because we are also backed by ESA, which is a wonderful thing, we're also trying to tap into bigger organizations around the world that have started to show a significant interest in open source, not necessarily for geospatial, but also for geospatial. So here are just a few screenshots of different organizations with which we want to build some better connections and to tap into the knowledge of the people that are working in those organizations. In that respect, we can think of, for example, the open source initiative with respect to licenses. We can think about the Open Geospatial Consortium for the compliance with geospatial standards. So this is what we are trying to do. We have, I don't know if I put a slide, no I didn't, but we are also trying to prepare the field in having this FOSS4G Observatory like a very mild requirement. When, for example, the European Commission or ESA or any other procurement agency is putting a procurement, they say that we want a tool that can fix this problem, and if they have the requirement that that tool be open source, maybe the developers or the consortia or the company that is doing, they can spend 1 minute to insert what they have done into this observatory. So I know that this is not an easy thing to do, trying to tap into these big mammoth organizations, but this is one place where a lot of resources are going to go. So we also have a lot of improvement to do. If you ask me, so we are trying. As I've showed you, there is still information that we collect manually that maybe we could improve in doing so, and maybe do it semi-automatically. I don't know. One thing that we're really trying to do is change the way that we collect information related to geospatial standards compliance. Now what we do is manually doing it, searching through it, trying to understand. We know that, for example, OGC has its own processes for a software to become compliant with their standards. It's a very long rabbit hole in there, so we're still trying to figure out a better way to do it, but we are happy because we have the OGC people quite open to discussion, which is a great thing. We're not only tied to OGC. We're trying to reach ISO as well, but again as mentioned, it's not that easy. Another thing that we want to do is support with license interoperability. That is quite a complicated thing because a lot of these projects don't necessarily have a standardized license, or they have a standardized license, but they change like one phrase in it, and then it's not standard anymore, and then you really need to look into how that license is compliant with other licenses. So we still have improvements to do. Another thing that we're interested in, and this is something that ESA is also pushing, is trying to understand how we could how we could bridge gaps between software that is developed and used in scientific computing, for example, how related to public administration, related to commercial and to private industry, let's say. And we are having a first meeting talking about this subject. We have people from OSGeo, of course, from the R community as well, from OGC, the Commission, and ESA. What we try to understand is how these institutions, organizations are looking at software when it goes from, I don't know, I'll take the terminology of OSGeo, when it goes through its incubation process. We're trying to understand, for example, how ESA is considering this incubation process with respect to open source solutions, how the European Commission is doing that with the scope, with a higher scope at some point, of trying to define some guidelines or some best practices when you work on your project or when you're looking at a specific project. What exactly should you be checking in order for what you do to be eligible to be used by the European Commission, for example? So this is like a long aim of us. Yeah, so I'm done. Thank you. Questions?